All right. So just a quick uh, review. The Agile board in Jira is based on a Scrum lifecycle. There's a backlog of issues that can be ordered. Those can be put into sprints, which are time boxed. That length can be whatever you want it to be. It's usually 1 or 2 weeks in length. And then the team works towards completing those items. They actually mark them, drag them into the done column, and you end up with a working piece of software at the end that can be reviewed or you can provide feedback on as a demonstration. So that looks like this. This is actually one of the MyType projects, Combined Annotations and Reporting. At the bottom, they have a backlog of tasks to be completed, which have been ordered, and these are just drag and drop into order. And they've created a sprint and put the top items, the highest priority, into the sprint for a given time frame. From the day-to-day perspective, that is the developers or the team members use the work queue, and these items on the left are still to be done. They can be dropped to an in progress queue. They can be assigned to people. You can pick up an item and assign it to yourself, and then drag it over to done within that sprint time frame. So that's generally how the board functions. There is one additional part of the board we didn't talk about last week, and I wanted to just go over that quickly, is the reporting component. Once a sprint has been completed, and you can actually complete and close out a sprint, it will tell you everything that has been done or still not done, which can be put back onto the backlog at that point. And that happens when you actually complete a sprint. Once that's done, you get the data from that sprint into a report board. So I'm going to show you a sample report here from Iron Reporter, since we have quite a bit of data and closed sprints. Just to give you an idea, as I mentioned last week, we actually size each of our tasks and work items with points. You can also use hours, and this board just nicely calculates when a sprint has been completed. It kind of shows how many points have been completed along the cycle of the sprint. Shows you total points completed and which individual tickets were completed. It also gives you additional information about which issues were removed or added to the sprint during the sprint, and that's additional information that you can track for the overtime. The other one we don't use a lot of these. There's a lot of different types of views of the data across multiple sprints. Um, this is another view of that burn down chart for a given sprint, which you can change and show individual sprints. Velocity chart is the other one. You want to kind of see how your team's doing over time in terms of the number of hours or points completed against what was planned. That's what this does. It just does a sprint by sprint view and shows you how many were completed against how many were planned. So this lets you figure out your velocity across time of the team and how they're working. That allows you to plan the next sprint. So if we're doing about 20 points of work, then we want to do about 20 points of work in the next sprint. These are pretty canned reports. So this is not an open ad hoc reporting mechanism. It's just going to show you certain information from an Agile perspective. Are there any questions about the reporting boards? Okay, I'm going to move into a little more flexible area called, it's tagged here at the top as issues. This provides you with filters and queries into the various Jira projects. If you just do search for issues, it brings up a standard query board. By default, it's just showing you everything in Jira across all projects. You can filter this down to specific projects that you're interested in. If I just wanted to see Hein reporter tickets of a particular type, let's just say at this point I would like to see all the user stories. This shows me all the user stories over time that have been worked on for Hein Reporter. So this can, you can break it down to everything that's open, which means it hasn't actually been completed. And you can add more fields. So any of the fields in Jira can be added to this quick query just by checking the boxes. One of the ones we use a lot is the label field. It will show you all the labels that are in use. So if I wanted to see everything for 5 a.m., I could see all the assigned stories for Iron Reporter for 5 a.m. solutions. Every query has an advanced view. If you really are comfortable with the Jira query language, you can just write it out yourself. And you can flip back to the basic view, which is just a drop-down view of the queries. The big distinction here is that this is only going to do an ANDed query. The advanced query will allow you to do some ORing and a couple other things. But again, it's not a full open database with fancy joins and that sort of thing, so it does have some limitations. Another key point, you can save queries. Here's a save query that I have. And these can actually be changed, and then you can save it with another name. So that is powerful for dashboarding. I will show you here in a minute. And also if you wanted to use these queries to display on a wiki page. So once you have them balanced and you have them the way you want them, saving them is the best way to do that and share.
Hey, Gary, are those your private queries?
These are queries that I have created. They can be shared. So for example, you can't actually do it for this sharing is a little bit of a misnomer. This one just basically sends an email with the link, so you can actually have anybody come and look at it. If you go into the manage filters, it gets bumped all the way to the bottom of the menu bar. You can see all the filters in the system. These are mine specifically, and you can change the sharing settings on a specific. You see these are private. Some of them are private. Some of them are group to 5 a.m. You can actually share it with everybody or specific projects as well. So you can change those settings for sharing.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
And this is the edit.
I have a quick.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. You mentioned something about putting these filters and putting them on the wiki. Does that mean that cards came in or out of that filter scope?
Becky, you broke up there. Can you ask that question again?
Yeah. So if you have a filter and you share it or you use it on a wiki page,
yes.
Would that wiki page be dynamically updated as cards come into or out of that filter scope?
Yes. If you use the direct query, it's a dynamic result set. That's right. So the wiki page would it's as if you just ran the query right from the wiki page.
And Becky, this is just one minor thing in terms of terminology. So while the rapid boards, when you're using them, they do appear as cards. There's obviously that metaphor has been applied in that view, but the Jira, typically people refer to them as Jira tickets or issues as opposed to cards.
Okay, we've called them cards always here. That's why I use cards. But
sure.
I'll try to fix my terminology.
It's fine. I just want to save you some potential communication issues when, I guess, working with the IAM folks.
That's fair. Thank you.
All right. Let me jump back to the generally the issue board here. You can export a static data set, based on the query results at any time. I seem to be having trouble with the Jira server now. Make sure I'm still on the VPN. The export option, here we go. So this allows you to dump it into Excel. This will allow you to do some more fancy sorting and querying and filtering that you want to do through an Excel mechanism, or chars and barts and graphs, anything like bars and graphs, anything like that. That's
So, Greg,
basically
another
where you're
example. This is what we end up doing. What we ended up doing on Nine Reporter a couple times, so it's just easier for Matt as the product owner, is we would export, the backlog and get filter it down to, the story level or the feature level. And then he would just go in and quickly sort them. It was easier for him to just prioritize, let's say if there was 150 tickets, he would prioritize it in Excel, send it back, and then we would do the legwork to get Jira updated. So it could be done in Jira using the rapid board view. But this obviously is an additional way to kind of make sense of the data. And it's really important when you're dealing with massive amounts of issues across multiple teams.
You can also adjust the columns that are displayed here. So if you want to see additional values that aren't being shown, the due date, anything like that, you can select that to show up in the columns here as well. And these sort. So if I wanted to sort everything by priority, just kick the column header and it'll sort the list. Any questions about the issue, basically the query mechanism? They call it filters, is what they officially call it. And again, these can be used in many ways. So I'm going to show you just a representative dashboard. This is an example of some of the widgets that come with the built-in dashboards of Jira. These are not, again, not totally open, but if you define a certain query, you can represent certain data in different ways. Just counts of information, for example, pie charts. This shows over time how many issues have been created, how many have been resolved. We often use that for bugs and improvements to kind of see how many bugs are being identified along the life cycle and how many we're fixing. That's a useful thing. And you can show tasks. There are different types of widgets here that can be represented. You can even change the way the layout looks on the page, adding gadgets. The best thing is to just kind of try some of these. Some are more useful than others. Again, they're pretty much out of the box. And once we have a better understanding of the types of information you're looking for, we can set up some dashboards in Jira, but also set up certain queries and display information on the wiki itself. The other place these filters can be used is in the actual boards. So to create a board, you can select multiple projects. Come on now, here we go. And on the planning board, you can set filters across the top of your planning board. So here's an example where in Reporter we use various types of quick filters. I believe you can also use the queries to filter down your information from here as well. That's pretty much it for the issue management and the query management.
I have a, this is
Yeah.
Becky. I have a weird question. So, can I create an Agile board that's private for me? And the reason I'm asking is that I'll have tasks across multiple projects, and I really just want to filter it down to things that are assigned to me so that I can kind of like prioritize my own work.
Sure.
And I don't
So,
know that that's really anything anyone else is interested in.
so, oh, Greg, if you don't mind. So, yes, that can be done. The problem that may arise is that you can't have. Are they still working on the office?
Something's going on.
Yeah, they're still working on the office. They're working on the other side now.
Okay. Um, so the issue that you may run into is that you can't have the same issues pulled in and being actively worked on in multiple boards. So, for example, if you've got the so far I've seen that the Ankama Annotation Reporting project is the most active to date, and I see that a board is there and you're tracking your work there. You don't want to have to. The issue that can happen is that you'll resolve a ticket and it kind of looks funny in the reporting for the other board. So it's better to stay. It's better to use the boards as they stand. Now, uh, so something else that you can use is if you go to any particular board and you filter on only my issues, which is it's a
Yeah.
default filter provided in the board, that kind of helps you filter down to just your view, but it's not a holistic view across multiple projects.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess what I was trying to do is be able to prioritize work across multiple projects on
Right.
one board. So I would be able to set up basically my lane of work and say,
Uh-huh.
here are the things I'm going to do. I'm going to do this one first, and I'm going to do this one from the other project next, and then,
Okay.
but if that's
The,
not
I
really
mean, it
something
will
that makes sense.
refresh Rob across projects as things change,
it
right?
will. It will. There's just again, I remember us having issues with that in the past.
Mhm.
I don't have a very clear answer for why it's a problem. Certainly, I just want we should exercise some caution when doing that. That's all I'm saying. Another approach is to create a rapid board that does span multiple projects and have all of the work
Right.
being planned. Then you've got that holistic view. And I think that sort of because we have so many different teams together, we just have to come up with the best way for these teams to work together.
Right. So the last menu here is the projects menu. If you view all the projects that you have access to, here we see that several projects have been created for the Oncommon work streams. So there are some tasks in these being worked on and managed right now, it looks like. So you do have to create an Agile board to view the project. And I saw, Becky, that you had created this, which is great. You guys have an iteration that you're working certain tasks on, and you have a backlog. And you've created epics to organize and categorize. So I think what we need to, I mean, next steps in terms of what you're talking about, Becky, is try to get a more holistic view across these projects. That's something we have to probably sit with Amy Chittister on, trying to figure out exactly the types of information she's interested in, and also you from a development point of view, and figure out some of the best ways to probably set that up. Because I think some of it could be a dashboard in Jira, some of it could be a wiki page in Jira that shows the information across projects. And hopefully, we've usually had to do some manual manipulation there where we pull some data out and then represent it in the way we want to see it. But hopefully we can avoid that as much as possible.
Any other questions? We booked this a little bit longer because we wanted to allow for more of a Q&A and ask, well, on my project, I want to do X.
I don't see any questions on this side.
Okay. There is general help, which is pretty good, in the through their online help system, and they have a few videos on their website that are helpful. I do encourage people to definitely look at this information, especially from the Jira 101 guide perspective. It's kind of a quick overview of just the fundamentals that we've gone through here in the last couple of weeks. And it goes deeper into reporting and some other topics.
I actually have a question for you guys
Mhm.
that's not related to Jira. Do you guys use Eclipse and Stash?
Yes, we do.
Okay. I'm hoping that one of you can help me get my Eclipse set up so that it actually connects to the Stash on here because
Mhm.
I can't get it to work.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I think part of the team uses IntelliJ, part of the team uses Eclipse. I think it's personal preference. They're different. Some people are using plugins so that they can, do the check-in, check-out, through there.
Yeah.
Some are
Right, and
doing
that's what I
themselves.
want. That's what I want to try and do. I've
Sure.
got Kepler and it's got eGet installed in it, and
Mhm.
it's just not working. And
Okay.
I'm assuming that I have something set up wrong. So if I
Okay.
get some assistance with that, that'd be great.
Sure. We
Yeah,
can. So
definitely.
either Steve or Jim could facilitate that.
Okay, thank you.
Hey Rob, this is Daryl. Is there a set of setup instructions somewhere on a Confluence page that describes how a new user would sort of get onboarded and get that connected?
Yes, for IR, but that's a very heavyweight stack. I don't think that's necessary for some of the uncombined components yet. That might derail effort that needs to be the progress that needs to be made on that in the short term. So this is probably some basic setup guides, sort of maybe irrespective of a specific implementation might be warranted. And maybe during the course of the conversation between Steve or Jim with Becky, we might figure out what that should be. But we can certainly get that comprehended somewhere.
Sure, I would think Jim could adjust what we have for the Mai Tai team.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. So we've gone through the capabilities of Jira and covered everything that you really would need to know as a user. We didn't go more into the administration pieces. I think that is probably more isolated discussion with, say, probably Becky, maybe Ross. I know last time we had a discussion around how do we notify QA that things are ready. We need to circle back on that. And we actually have you requested Rob access to the new wiki? Because 5EM team doesn't have access.
Yes, yes, I already fired out that email to
Okay.
Rob Linebacker.
Once we have that access, we can also help you set up and configure the wiki pages or the reporting pages. So I think that's the next step as a follow up with Amy Chittister, Becky, Ross, maybe a smaller team to work on that. Does that sound right, Becky?
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I personally don't have any questions right now in administration, but I think
Okay.
that there probably are other people that do.
Right.
So.
Okay.
So I've noticed that three out of so we created four projects, right? We created one for actionability, one for driver, one for the reporting piece, and then there's also the OCP. OCP is not being used yet, and I think we need to figure out what we can do to get that starting to be used. I think some of those folks were unable to join today's call, or should I say enough quorum to move forward on looking at, like Santoshi. Um, so I don't know. What do you think, Becky? What's the best way to move forward? Because we do want to make sure that this is being used and everyone understands how to use it. Because there's nitty gritty stuff like, well, what level of detail do I put in the ticket, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this has to do with just how teams work and um, trying to figure out the
Right.
best way to use the process.
Well, Santoshi's been actually at these meetings, and I think she's probably feeling okay. If not, I can sit down with her and help her out with things.
Yeah, I think I just need to start working with it.
Oh, you are
Right.
there.
Yeah. For the OCP, I think we would need to talk to Amy Chittister and Seth to find out if they are actually going to be using this to track work.
Mhm.
You know, Amy said, yeah, go ahead and set it up, because she was hoping that maybe they would, but I don't know, like, that's not my responsibility to drive that, so
Right.
Right.
I'm leaving that in Amy's hands. But yeah, I think in terms of, you know, understanding like what to put in cards and what the level of detail and things, I think that's something that we're probably just going to learn as we go. Like, what do we actually need in there? You know, I know
Sure.
that the cards that I put in aren't sufficient, but I know that.
So maybe a couple points. You know, we have the base version entered for each of these so that you can create tickets. You know, obviously we didn't add any components to help delineate certain or categorize certain types of tickets. One point to be cognizant of is that when you create components, sometimes, because anyone can create components on the fly or create labels on the fly, that sometimes that
Yeah.
can get a little bit out of hand. You know, so it's really important, you know, just like, you know, Becca, when we talked about having a good steward for wiki content, the same applies to categorizations of tickets. So
Right.
this is something that, you know, should be, you know, this really should be part of the retrospective, you know, at the end of a sprint is, okay, was there anything that was confusing, you know, or, you know, I was running these issues because I was running a search for something and, you know, it only showed 5 tickets, but I know there's more out there and it was probably just because of you know, one person was labeling it one way and someone was labeling it another way. So this isn't too much of an issue right now because, you know, the number of tickets in the system is incredibly manageable. But over time, as more and more people working on this, it's going to become more unmanageable. And so good due diligence and how we categorize things and track things will make that a much more efficient process.
Right.
So Rob, do you have like a best practices document that describes sort of how that's supposed to be managed, or if there's supposed to be, you know, a named sort of advisor making sure that the system's working right?
So no, we don't. And when it comes to best practices around, there's a lot of different schools of thought on what the best practices around components and labels should be. There's like threads going on discussion threads, you know, back and forth on which to use for when. You know, it can be very subjective. And so what matters most is that, you know, just like when you go to a restaurant, you don't want to see a menu with 500 items on it. You want to see 10 options because it's easier to pick from. So, you know, you know, picking a small discrete list to delineate the work and, you know, a healthy review of what's working and what's not is what's needed. So we've obviously what we've done on like AmpliSeek, for example, is different than we've done from IR because the needs of the teams were different. So there's no one size fits all approach. We just try to advise and try to figure out what's the best way to be effective.
So if something is identified as not working, and let's say you've got, you know, 2 different labels that mean the same thing, who owns fixing it?
It should be the identified project lead in Jira. So there needs to be really the Scrum Master should run that. So in the case of, you know, whatever the reporting piece, you know, Becky would make the call and say, guys, we really should be, let's just use this label.
Yeah, we can collaborate on, you know, kind of what the approach is for that based on our experiences and the intent. And then, yeah, the project lead that owns the Jira project would make the change.
Hey, Rob or Greg, do
Yeah.
either one of you want to talk about the types of Agile boards? I know that we, and I'm talking about PI, follow the Scrum process, but
Yep.
I can see some of the work streams using Kanban.
Okay. All right. So the Scrum board we've talked about is the more formal approach based on a specific iteration. Kanban is a little less structured. Let me see here if we have a Kanban board. We might.
We did. Remember we created one?
I know we did it
And
for.
apparently I pronounced that wrong.
I think it's Kanban, isn't it?
Well, no. So everyone
Kanban,
in
Kanban.
the U.S. says Kanban, but I studied Japanese in college. It
Yeah.
should be Kanban.
Yeah, that's the Japanese version. So here's a couple. Let me see if I can find.
So Kanban is more a revolving door type of approach, right?
Yeah,
There
it's
is
first
no
in, first
definitive
out kind of thing.
start, definitive end. It's first in, first out, which is why it's perfect for like IT services, right? They fill them as they get it based on priority. So that may work for design services, but I would imagine that more often than not, the Scrum approach is actually better because you want to make sure certain things are done before a sprint begins. And so getting that in the queue for, say, this sprint so that it's ready to go for the devs in the following sprint may line up better.
So the idea with the Kanban is you don't know as well what's coming. So we used it for maintenance, for example, when we deployed IR 4.0, because we didn't know when a bug would be identified or when it would hit the board. So it would just line them in the backlog. You could then still sort the backlog and just pull the items straight in and work them without having a time box necessarily of an iteration. So that's pretty much the only distinction there. They don't really have the planning component of the board, but they have the work board. So whatever hits the backlog over here on the left, the idea is you just pull it through and fix it or work it. So it's more the idea of it works better when you almost have like a repetitive nature to the work. We're doing kind of the same thing over and over again or something like that. That's why for bug fixing it worked well, because they would just line up. You could quickly sort them by priority and just pop them off the top and work them through. So that's the biggest distinction between the two approaches.
Hey, Greg, we now have
Yeah.
access to the Mai Tai.
We do?
Yeah. Rob Rybacker just added us.
I don't know if I have it up here. This one. Yes. All right. Well, are there any other questions about Jira?
Okay. I have another weird question.
No, they're not weird.
I'm thinking about the actionability work stream. There's really two types of work in that work stream. There's the curation effort, and then there's the effort to create the system. There's system development work. System development work is much more traditional, like software engineering type work. The curation work is much more of the repetitive type of work. I think that a Kanban board would work really well for the curation work, and I think the Agile board might work better for the systems development work. Mm-hmm. Can you have two boards on one project, yes, or is that weird?
In fact, what I would recommend is to have two components, one called curation, one called sysdev, or whatever you want to call it, and then you create the boards that filter on the project and the specific component, and then that way each team can work with their specific tickets.
Perfect. Okay, cool, thanks.
Yeah. That wasn't weird at all. That was perfect.
That was a very good question.
You're using the capabilities for the different teams and different ways that they work.
And thank you, Becky. That's exactly what I had envisioned for the curation step, because it is a lot of repetition.
All right.
And easier for Santoshi.
Anything else at this point for this session?
Do we want to talk about bulk editing?
I could go over that.
It's a very powerful feature. You have to be very careful, but it can be very helpful when if so. Let's say, like we were talking about earlier, that you discover that teams over time have been misusing labels, or let's say that you want to consolidate three different labels or components into one. This is where the bulk edit can be very very effective because doing it one by one, making edits can take a very long time.
So the tools menu here on your issues view, once you have your query set, um, you can make changes. I thought there were checkboxes here. What happened to them? Oh, there they are. So you select to make changes to the items. You can then select the ones that you want to change, or you can select all of them and then make a particular change. So if, for some reason I wanted to edit a particular field, I could do that. If I wanted to move certain issues to another project, I could do that. If transition them all by state to closed, I can do that. So there's certain things that you can do with these tickets at this point, and this is just going to edit across all the issues that you selected.
It's be very powerful, especially if you use components. So let's say, for example, that, or let's say that everything's under a specific epic, right? You've decided to push out any features under that epic to a later release. So using the bulk edit, you can filter for and search for any tickets that are in the current version for that component or that epic, and then you can move them. You can do a bulk edit change to change the fixed version to some later release. So it gives you a little bit more power to move things around.
Yeah, we've definitely used it for that, to move things to a patch or something like that. Yeah.
Can you do that on closed issues?
That's a good question. On closed issues, I'm not sure if it actually locks anything. Pretty sure it doesn't.
I think it's dependent on the workflow that you have assigned to your project.
Right. So
you can reopen things. We do have a reopen capability, and that's why it's kind of an interesting question, because we can go from closed to reopened in our workflow.
and that's the life cycle of an issue in the default workflow scheme,
right,
which all projects are currently using. You can come up with a custom workflow scheme, but we'd have to work with Rob Reinbecker to introduce that.
Okay. Yeah, we had to do the same thing with our current Jira. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but for reporting purposes or searching or bulk edits, that was something I ran into.
So the most important thing is that the teams are as effective as possible. So if you're finding that the default workflow scheme is not working for you and you want to make a few changes, like you want to have a different resolution step, after resolved, like go to QA or design review or whatever you want to have, then I say go for it. I mean, some of this is going to be teams attempting to make small changes to see if it makes a market improvement in how they work. And so you have to try it out for a bit, then make some changes again. This is going to be an evolving sort of organic improvement, process.
All right. Any more questions?
Yes, this is Jane.
Yes.
I know that there should be email notifications, but do new members do they need to do something to get those notifications? And when is it? When they sign to the issue, watching the issue, will it happen automatically?
So in terms of tickets being created, when you create an issue, it basically Jira is open for anybody to create an issue. So either you're going to assign it at that point, or it's going to be automatic, which usually there is a default person for the project that's going to get assigned the ticket, and they'll get a notification. Or you can assign it to anybody, or you can unassign it. It's not assigned to anybody. So that's on creation. once it's created, if nobody's assigned, that's why we have to have a Scrum Master really managing the queue and the backlog to make sure that things are ordered properly with the product owner in terms of their importance. They don't have to be assigned in the to-do. Our process is that we use the team that we have to work items in the queue as they come available, so anybody can grab it and work it. If we know that a certain individual has a certain skill set, we will assign it directly to that person. I see Carl's assigned here, for example. So he knows he's going to be working that at some point and moving it across the board. We usually leave that to our technical lead. But go ahead.
But Greg, I think she's more curious about just what are the general notification settings. And so Jane, at least in terms of the default notification scheme, you will not get a notification if a ticket is created that is not assigned to you, that if you're not a project leader, you're not like added somewhere in the comments with the, using the @ prefix to embed your name, you will not get a notification. It can be set up so you get everything, but that can generate so much email traffic.
Yeah.
I'm not going to a lot. So, but also this is the same with, we could work with Rob Redmaker to come up with a custom workflow scheme. You can come up with a custom notification scheme, which can then go to certain groups. So there, again, it just depends on what you need. Some of this can be done outside of the existing process. So let's say that, hey Carl, can you mute? Getting feedback from your machine. So sometimes we can make active changes in terms of just process outside of Jira. So let's say that, on a particular project that you're interested in knowing about every ticket or certain types of tickets, you just tell everyone on the team to tag you in the ticket so that you will get the notification and it is on your radar.
Yeah, so I was asking just the default in the new Jira, since I didn't use new Jira that much. So if I'm on the watch list, will I get the notification? If I commented on this issue, will I get notification?
Oh, yes.
That's the both.
Right. If you start watching an issue, you will always get notified of any change to that issue. And these are examples of tagging somebody in a comment. So that's where you use the @ sign and you basically insert that particular user's name, and when the comment is saved, they will be notified.
Okay, so since it's better to use Jira for communication instead of email, so like you have some questions about issue, you write it down in here. So if you want the right person to get it, you need to put his username, right?
That's right. Yeah, we do absolutely recommend that you use this commenting feature to have a dialogue as opposed to a separate email stream.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Can you also tell me that when you attach file, like anyone can attach a file to the issue, but what about remove the file? Because in the old Jiras, it was only administrator could do it. So if user do that? It was attached by mistake. He wants to change it or remove it. So can it be done?
I believe that if the creator can remove.
I am not sure about that, actually.
So
there are groups in Jira where you have certain access, like developer group, manager group, that slightly adjust those permissions. So we would have to look at the particular project.
Okay, so should we do this like roles, or should people be aware and set it up at the beginning of the project? Who can do what?
We'll take that as an action item to confirm. I'm pretty sure that the creator can remove. Okay. But if you're not the creator, then you shouldn't be able to willy-nilly go delete someone else's documents, right?
Right. Yeah, I was saying that because usually I'm attaching files and it could be, by mistake I attach the wrong one to this issue and not to the right issue. So yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? That was great. All right.
So on the fixed version, on the version that you assign to this issue, usually, guys, you are using the fixed version, right? A facts version is like not required, but usually that's the fixed version.
Right.
That's correct.
Which release is it going to be fixed in?
Right. Okay.
Okay. We can wrap this session up. And you can always reach out to Rob Offit or myself. I'm going to post these videos, and I have some PowerPoint slides that go through an outline. We will post those on the wiki so that you guys will have access to it.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.